very overwhelming. It's just so emotionally exhausting, especially at the beginning. I don't know if other people have said that, but it's, just because you don't know how these people are going to react to you or not.
Hello, you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I am your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for Not Parent Expected or Non-Paternal Event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. Welcome to episode 78, and today I am speaking with Kathy. Hi, Kathy.
Hello.
So nice to talk to you again.
It is nice.
And we are probably some of the lucky few NPEs where we've gotten a chance to meet in person back when you could do that sort of thing. We had, through one of the NPE Facebook groups, there was a, what do you call it? Like a regional Minnesota group? Right. And someone was kind enough to come up with a time and a place, and we were going to meet at this pizza restaurant in the back room. And I would say there's like a dozen of us that showed up that day.
Yeah. And it was nice. It was pretty early on in your journey.
Oh my gosh, I was such a mess that day, Kathy.
Yes. I'm like, she looks like deer in the headlights. Like she is still shook. So
I think, yep. And I think that's what it was. I don't know if I was, 3 months in, 4 months in, who knows, but it's kind of amazing. You have a bunch of strangers coming together. We have this internet community and we become friends. We support each other.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Kathy, you're going to have to, I was been interested in listening to your whole story today.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and get started. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions, but why don't you start from the beginning?
So I took some notes so I'd remember. So I was born in the early 60s and I was last of 5 children. There were 3 boys and a girl, and then me. And they were all 18 months apart, and I'm 5.5 years later. And so I always thought that I was treated a little differently just because I was so much younger. And we all kind of have brown hair, blue eyes, and I'm very short. I'm only 5'1", and the boys are taller, and my sister's only 5'3". So there I didn't really stand out, So I thought, okay, I'm still part of this family, and never really felt out of place other than I wasn't really included because they were so much older. So, and they were kind of hellions, let's push the edge of the envelope, get in trouble. There was some drugs, in the family. So and I always thought, okay, that's an impression on me where I am not going to be like that because I saw what it did to my mom. So I just kind of ignored that and just kind of lived on my life. I never had the best memory, and which is kind of odd, but my parents were together. They were actually married twice. And through Ancestry, I did our lineage and found out that they were actually married twice, and I was born in between their marriages. So I thought, they must have got pregnant, and then so he got, remarried her, because she was pregnant. And then when I was about 5, I had a little brother who was stillborn. And shortly thereafter, he had left. My dad had left. So never close. and grew up all the time thinking, um, you know, he didn't come around very often. It was more like he would make plans and then he wouldn't show. And so I got to just be so upset, and it's like it was worth finally at 12 I just said I don't want him around because it was so painful not to have him when you look forward to seeing him or so I just wanted him out of my life. And so kind of just everyone knew, well, I don't have a dad. So I was kind of fortunate that way. So my birth certificate father, him, wasn't really in my life, so I didn't really have that pain of not, feeling that very close bond. So, but what happened is that in December of 2016, my daughters bought me the DNA test because I've always been curious. And during, right before that, we were at my, family's Christmas. And I was saying, yeah, I really want to do that because there was some kind of story that on my dad's side, his name was Fred. On my dad's side, he was descendant of Indians. And we always like, oh, how does that, can my kids get any kind of scholarship, and all that stuff. But in I knew it was going to be difficult because my grandfather I knew didn't have a birth certificate, and we thought he was born on the reservation. And when he filed for Social Security, he didn't have a Social Security number, so they had to create a birth certificate for him. So, or at some part of his life where he needed a Social Security number to work, and then they had to create a birth certificate for him because he never had one. So, and so we go back to, I did the DNA test, I get my results, and I don't see any Indian. I'm like, whatever, this stuff is just garbage, and didn't really pay attention to it. Well, then in February of 2016 or 2017, so a couple months after I get it, someone reached out to me and asked how we were related. She goes, I'm working on my husband's ancestry and he was adopted. I'm like, I have no idea who you are. And I just kind of ignored her. And that was in February. But then in June, another person contacted me and I'm like, I don't understand. This person, I don't know who they are. And they were both like third or fourth cousins. So it wasn't anything close. But then around that time, I was on Facebook and one of my cousins on my dad's side said, "Oh, we got our results back from DNA testing, and and it showed that we're Indian, but they had Indian on both sides, their mom and their dad's side." But so I quick look them up. I jump on my account to see, their information. I'm like, they're not showing up as related. So I was like, what's the deal? So I called my sister, who, she's the one that's 5.5 years older. So we're pretty close. And she said, Mom told you that, or I always told you that you weren't dads. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? She goes, yeah, there was a rumor that Mom, got pregnant by someone else. And I'm like, and, she was not married at the time. She was in between her two marriages. But um, what she said is that the how did she put it? She goes, I remember this man came to the house and he um, introduced himself as Gene, or Mom said his name was Gene, and he came in to get you like when you were 5 years old to take you for a visit. And she goes, I thought he was taking you away forever. And so she was upset and crying all day. But nope, they brought me back. But I don't remember that at 5. And like I said, I have this terrible memory, like, and it could be, like ADHD or something, but I just don't remember things back then because it wasn't really a good living situation with
Mm.
him in and out. And the kids, the older kids were into drugs. And when I was about 12, I'm thinking, yeah, my sister and two of my brother's girlfriends all were pregnant at 17. So we had a lot of going on in the house. And
Mm.
so, when she said this, she goes, I've told you many times. I'm like, I think I'd remember if you told me that dad wasn't my dad. Or maybe it could have been that she did tell me. But, when you're mad at your sibling, dad isn't even your dad.
Mm. Mhm.
And, so I just didn't even put it together. So I was like, well, what do I do now? And I noticed that in Ancestry, there was a person that was initials, BGMG or something, BJMG or something. And I was like, I don't know who this person is, but they're listed as a close relative to a cousin or something, how they listed in Ancestry. And didn't know. So I kind of wrote her an email. This is like July of 2017 now, and said, hi, I'm trying to find this out, kind of explain a little bit that, where I was from. And I said, I'm looking for maybe a gene that was related. And so she said, well, my dad's having heart surgery. So, but we have a family wedding coming up. So what I'll do is I will talk to him and see if he has any ideas. So I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I just kind of let it ride. And then in August, so a month later, um, she said she talked to dad, and he was more like, well, I have a cousin named Gene, and if he had a child, it's none of your business, type of thing. Where
Mhm.
he's very gruff, and they were always afraid of him growing up. Like he's very, very stern that way.
Mhm.
So I thought, well, hit a wall. So let me see. I'm going to do 23andMe. So I do 23andMe. Like we're talking October of that year now. And I connect with this cousin named Angie. Oh my gosh, she's a hoot. so, and so she and I, we were trying to figure this out. And she goes, well, I'm going to go check with my cousin. She's really smart. Well, she checks with the person I was connecting with. And I'm like, oh, because, I didn't know who she was yet, And, and all of a sudden we went, wait a minute. Oh, so she's my half sister? Oh, we figured that out. And so what she did is that um, she and one other sister, they did 23andMe, and they show up as half sisters. And it was like, oh my God, so I'm completely freaked out. And so we're still talking like October of 2017. So then later on that year, or like the month after, I meet the oldest sister and my cousin, because they're both in the Twin Cities. And I find out that there's actually 4 half sisters, and they're all 1 year apart. And the youngest one is 3 months older than me.
Mm.
So when dad had her, when she was born, he was 23 and had 4 children. So that's,
Same mom, the
yep.
same mom
Hmm.
for, I mean, except for yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what happened is, and they live in Plainview, Minnesota, and we are in the Twin Cities. So he had lived up here and worked at the like armor, the stockyards in South St. Paul. And so did my mom. And that's how we met. I found out that they went on a date to the drive-in. It's like, oh my God, you know, went in the back seat, and along comes me. But that was kind of funny that he had explained that to me. But
A drive-in baby.
yes, Yeah. So, yeah, but that November of 2017, so I met one of the sisters and my cousin, and then I reached out to the other sisters and, talked to them and emailed. And so I have one in Sioux Falls and one in Plainview that lives by dad, and one in Boston, the original one that I talked to. And so I'm getting used to all this. I'm just like having this nervous breakdown at work. Finally, I just had to tell people, like my close workers, close coworkers, and just said, this is what's going on. And I'm sorry I'm such a fruitcake right now, but, I'm having this identity crisis, and it's like, you don't know whether you're losing your mind or, and you're angry, you're so angry at your mom and my sister I grew up with. And it's so funny because she and the Boston sister had the same first name, and their middle names are very close, Jean and Joan. So it's just crazy that, I have to deal with that. And they're both kind of the same personality.
Hmm.
But um, so it's been frustrating where the sister I grew up with, um, she was kind of supportive and saying, you need to reach out and find this, dad, if he's still alive. I mean, that's awesome, and get to know him. And then she was so supportive. Well, then when I started meeting the sisters, and I actually called them my sister, and she was very, very offended. Like, don't ever call me your half sister. And I'm like, well, technically you are, but
Mm.
you know, and it it really hurt her. And my brothers too were offended too. Like, oh, you have this new family now. You don't need us. And it's like,
Mm.
never. It's like I just have a lot of, oh, I understand. And I don't know if it was because of how my mom raised me, if she knew who my dad was and kind of directed me towards certain things, because he was into electronics. He worked at IBM for 30 years.
Mm.
And I went to Winona State and I went for computer programming. So
Oh.
it's like I th- I was trying to figure out if I was in there with one of the sisters, because they're all very, very, very technical and very smart. Two are programmers. um, One's a project manager and one's a chemist. She's a PhD. The family I grew up with, I'm the only one that has a degree. And it's so I don't know if it was my mom pushing me, knowing who my father was or not. But um, whenever my mom drank too much, she would tell people that, oh, yeah, that, Kathy has a different dad. But she never said anything to me. And when she was on her deathbed, my sister tried to get it out of her. Who is this dad? She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, come on, mom. She's got to know. And she wouldn't tell. So she denied it to the end.
Okay.
And she said that um, what it what I've heard is because I've asked my mom had one sister and asked the cousins over there. Some of them knew, some of them didn't. And it was always known that Fred said, she's, he knew I wasn't his daughter, but she's my daughter and that's all there is. And he goes, no one's going to talk about this. But everybody knew, and it just was really frustrating and hurtful. And, you know, it could have, I could have learned, much sooner, and maybe had a relationship with him. But I think I've digressed. But I was kind of wanted to explain how I met him.
Yeah.
So in in 2017, end of 2017 is when I met the sisters or talked to them. And then in May of 2018, my cousin Angie, who lives in the Twin Cities, she um her her dad and stepmom live in Sioux Falls area. So they were coming in town, and so was her sister who lives in Sioux Falls. So so we got together at their house, and one of my daughters and her boyfriend then came with. And oh my gosh, we had the best time. But I was so nervous about meeting, how are you going to react to me? How are you going to treat me? Because here I'm the bastard child. And, but oh my gosh, the love and support, it was just amazing. And, so happy. And it was just like, the acceptance that, in our family that I'd never really had, I felt like I belonged,
Mm.
and I look like these siblings. So it's very fun that way.
Mm.
And so in June of 2018, so I had met, my stepmom, or I'm sorry, uncle and his wife. Well, his wife, I still call her my aunt. She talked to my dad's wife, who's my stepmom. She the his original hers first wife passed away from cancer about 11 or 12 years before I met them, and which I hear often about, this would never have happened if she was still alive. Understandable, but it wasn't my fault. But um so in June, the end of June or whatever, there's 5 siblings. My dad has 4 other siblings, and my uncle has this huge cabin in South Dakota somewhere. So they get together at least once a year. And so my aunt talked to my stepmom and kind of told her what was going on, and then like a month later or a couple weeks later, he called me for the first time. So
Your birth father?
yep, it was crazy. And I had known that he had early onset Alzheimer's. So I wasn't sure if where his memory was, and, how he'd react, because sometimes, they're combative, but he's very witty, and, he does repeat stories a lot, but he remembers old stories. So I always ask him about what it was like to be young. And so, and then in September of 2018, the one from Boston came in town, and one of our cousins lives in the Twin Cities as well. So we had this huge meet and greet. So I met all my dad's siblings at one set,
Oh,
and
wow.
then several of my cousins, So
Mm.
it was quite fun and very overwhelming. It's just so emotionally exhausting, especially at the beginning. I don't know if other people have said that, but it's, just because you don't know how these people are going to react to you or not. I'm not real close with all the cousins and aunts, but there's a couple of them I talk to frequently. So that's been nice. So of the 4 sisters, I said there's 4, they're all 1 year apart. The oldest one is, I don't know, I don't think she's, I mean, I think it's just her personality, but she isn't very accepting of me. But
Okay.
at the beginning, she seemed like she was very accepting, but no, I don't know if it's her husband that is, you know, questioning things or doesn't believe me, or I don't know. But I get along very well with the other 3.
Mm.
And I've been out to Boston to visit, to spend some time with her. And the one that lives in Sioux Falls area, we've been to her house a couple times to spend the weekend with them. It's been crazy, but if I feel like this is my new normal, and this is how life is. And just like the siblings I grew up with, I don't always talk to them all the time, but that's how I am with the new siblings. So, but it's kind of nice, even during COVID, we try to do Zoom calls every so often, at least to catch up and see each other, and we were doing game nights over
Oh.
over the internet. So
Mhm.
it's been it's been quite an experience, I guess. And when you see those ads on TV for ancestry, the ancestry DNA or something, it's like,
Yeah.
don't do it. It's like, I can't imagine, this woman that had 4 children, and he got someone else pregnant at the same time. But,
So
you
he
know,
was with his wife,
yeah.
yeah, when
So,
you were conceived.
yes, but he worked up in the cities and she was back in Plainview, down by
Ah,
Rochester. So
uh-huh.
she didn't, and he was going to school for electronics too.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Was he ever told about your existence, or were you a surprise to him as well?
Well, he was totally shocked, and my sisters didn't believe him at first, but I didn't have anything else to go on. My mom said that, or my sister said that someone came and took me for a visit, but I don't know if it was, my dad, or who she thought was my dad, or
Mhm.
yeah. So that part is frustrating.
Yeah.
And my oldest brother passed away a few years ago, so I was never able to ask him. This all happened after he passed.
Mm. Is your siblings from your original family, I know that they were a bit offended, acting envious in the beginning. Are you still like unable to broach this topic with them?
Sometimes
Yeah.
we don't. With the brothers, I don't really talk about it too much. But my sister, if I was doing a genealogy class, learning how to do ancestry, the lineage part, and I was really, really busy for like 7 weeks. So she just went off on me. Oh, sure, you get all mad at me and you just like your new family more. It's like, oh, for God's sakes.
Mm.
So it's like, no, no. So it,
Yeah, that seems to be kind of the norm. I mean, not the offended, but it the unacknowledged, or the I guess I just haven't yet heard a story where someone says, my sibling I grew up with my whole life is completely supportive and
yeah.
really encouraging of me. And well, maybe there is, but I can't
Yeah. And she was
see that.
so encouraging of me when, you got to find your dad if he's still alive. You
Mm,
know, it's like,
mhm.
where was this 10 years ago? If you were so certain that, you know, that I had another family out there. So,
Mhm.
oh yeah. And I forgot I was going to say that one Christmas when I got it, right before we got together, for our family Christmas. And my sister-in-law said, well, it doesn't matter, what it shows, you're still our family. And I was like, what? That's when I was like, kind of a slap in the face, like, you people know something, you know?
Mhm.
That's when I was kind of realizing that things aren't that
Mhm.
up and up. So,
And you have children, Kathy?
mhm. And I have 2 daughters that are, 29 and 31. So they're older, and they were both married in the last year and a half, I guess. Um, one got married in September of 2019, and the other one got married in September of 2020. So vastly different weddings. But the one in 2019, I invited the whole new family, and I got to dance with my dad at the dance. I was just It made my whole day. I was just like, oh my god, this is
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
And what my daughter did is that she put my new family sitting with my old family in some of it, because
Smart. I love it.
yeah. And the one sister that's only 3 months older than me, um my sister I grew up with was totally freaked out. She goes, "She talks like you. How does that happen?" It's like, I know, isn't that crazy? How does that happen? So,
Because your daughters didn't really have, it sounds like, didn't really have much of a grandpa in terms of your birth certificate father.
no, not at all. And my mom passed away when my girls were 5 and 7. So they didn't really have any grandparents. And so they're not real close with my dad now.
Mm-hmm.
But, they were invited to the, wedding, and they came, and my aunt and uncle did, and my cousins, because, they were kind of the ones that started it all. So it was a really good time.
I'm happy to hear there's always the icky mixed in with it, the sad, but it's like, I love to hear these
I know
connections you make and these new relationships, especially when you're accepted and loved.
And my dad just turned 80. I know. So I was so lucky to meet him. And his sister, who I think is 84, 83, she's sharp as a tack. So she's one of the aunts that I contact, and she just tells me all these stories, and it's just so awesome. And she lives in an assisted living facility, but I think that now that it's getting warmer, I think they can get out of their facility. So I think we're going to go up, and it's up in Sartell. So it's not like it's down the block.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to go up and take her out for a visit.
Oh, well, congratulations on your new connections.
Yeah. So things are settled, but it was quite the bumpy road when we first started, when you jump into someone's family and say, "Oh, by the way, Dad wasn't faithful." Here I am. So
that is so confusing to hear later in life, from family members, siblings saying, "Oh, we always knew you had a different dad. We'd told you. We've heard this story before." That would just be mind-boggling.
Yeah, and they said, it wasn't my job to tell you. And then I just can't really voice it to my sister I grew up with, because she just, says, "I told you so many times." Yeah. It's like, well, if you did, I wouldn't be so, completely upended and, traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, she can't hear it. She can't understand it.
No. You know what it's like, don't you, Lily?
I do. Yeah, I'm nodding along here.
Yeah. But if I would do it all again, I think I would. I mean, I didn't get the answer I was initially looking for about the Indian, but it's always good to have knowledge, about your ancestry. So
true. If people want to get in touch with you, could they do that?
Yes. I'm always willing to help along, try to make other people's journeys a little easier. So, do you want me to just give you my email?
Go ahead and give me the email. I'll put it in the show notes for people that can see that.
Okay, so it's just Kathy MM at Comcast.net.
And that's going to be the name of your episode title as well. Kathy MM's story.
Yes.
Did you say Comcast.net?
Yes.
Kathy, thank you so much for sharing your story today. These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come heal with us.